Introduction. Poor mechanic boarded plane with crying baby. Unaware woman beside him was a heartbroken billionaire. The hum of the plane's engines barely masked the soft sobs that echoed down the narrow aisle. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some glancing with sympathy, others with irritation. A man in oil-stained jeans, holding a restless infant close to his chest, hesitated at row 17B. Gently rocking the child who hadn't stopped crying since they entered the airport. Tired eyes met disapproving stares, but he kept his head down, whispering calming nonsense into his daughter's ear. He didn't notice the woman already seated by the window, wrapped in luxury but cloaked in an invisible sorrow that had nothing to do with the noise around her. As he squeezed into the seat, apologizing softly, she turned to him with a smile too gentle to be from a stranger. That was the first time their lives touched a broken bar, and neither of them could have imagined how everything was about to change. He didn't know where to look. Everything around him felt foreign. The polished armrest beneath his rough fingers, the sterile scent of compressed air, even the cup of orange juice the flight attendant handed him, so pristine, so unlike the rusted tools and motor grease he was used to. He kept bouncing his daughter gently, whispering her name like a secret lullaby. She didn't calm down, but she stopped screaming. Progress. The woman beside him hadn't spoken a word since he sat down, but somehow her silence wasn't cold. She watched the clouds roll past the window with a gaze so distant it felt like her soul wasn't aboard the flight at all. She wore a coat that looked softer than anything he'd ever touched and perfume that carried faint traces of jasmine and loss. Her fingers toyed with the corner of a folded photo peeking from her purse, and for a brief second, he saw her eyes shimmer like they had been holding back something far heavier than tears. He thought she might ask him to switch seats, like others had in the past. But she didn't. Instead, she reached into her bag, took out a tiny plush bunny, and handed it to the baby with a smile so maternal it startled him. His daughter grabbed it instantly and, miraculously, fell quiet for the first time since they boarded. "You're good with kids," he muttered, unsure if he was intruding. She just smiled again, this time smaller, almost broken. "I used to be," she whispered. The sentence hung in the air, heavier than the jet's roar outside. He didn't pry. He knew the weight of unsaid things. His own life was full of missed birthdays, unopened letters, dreams tucked away behind rent receipts and hospital bills. But somehow, the quiet between them didn't feel awkward. It felt familiar. They flew in silence for a while, interrupted only by occasional hiccups from the baby or the rumble of turbulence. At some point, the woman closed her eyes, but her hand never let go of the picture. The mechanic peeked just a glimpse and saw the edges of a small face, a child maybe 5 or 6, all dimples and innocence. His chest tightened, unsure if he should have looked, but even more unsure of how someone could carry that much ache in silence. "Her name's Eva," he said, nodding toward the baby. "Her mum a broken bar past. Heart condition. Unexpected." She opened her eyes slowly, something in her expression changed like two broken compasses recognizing each other. "I'm sorry," she replied, barely above a breath. "My son's name was Leo." Was. The word echoed between them. Not is, but was. Past tense. The kind that doesn't change with time. He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Just nodded slowly, offering a moment of silence more powerful than any condolences. She reached into her purse again and handed him a bottle of milk, explaining softly that it might help calm Eva if she was hungry. The gesture didn't just surprise him, it overwhelmed him. Not because of what it was, but because of how it was given. With care, with no judgment, with the kind of kindness that doesn't ask for anything in return. As the plane cut through layers of clouds, so did their conversation. Piece by piece, hesitantly at first, then with the ease of people who'd held too much alone. She told him about her late husband, the car accident, the lawsuit, the headlines. The press called her the Iron Widow, but they didn't know about the nights she screamed into her pillow or the mornings she stared at Leo's empty bed, unsure whether to make it or leave it untouched. He shared stories about the garage, about fixing engines in the middle of winter with frostbitten fingers, about buying second-hand shoes just so Eva could have new ones, about the time he almost gave her up for adoption but couldn't bring himself to sign the papers. They laughed, they paused, they grieved together without ever labeling it. He asked why she was flying alone. She hesitated. I needed to leave. I kept waiting for grief to leave me, but it didn't. So I left everything else. And just like that, he understood her in ways no one else probably could. Loss has a language of its own, one that doesn't need explanation. When Eva fell asleep, her tiny fists still clutching the plush bunny, the woman reached over and gently adjusted the blanket around her. It was a simple motion, but something about it made his throat tighten. You know, he said quietly, I was nervous about this trip. Didn't think I belonged here. On this flight, in the sky. Like life had given first class to everyone else, and I was just sneaking in through the back. She looked at him, and not just looked, but saw him. I've lived in mansions where I never felt home, she said. Sometimes, you find belonging in the most unexpected places. He didn't know why that made his eyes sting. Maybe because he never expected someone so far from his world to say something that close to his truth. By the time the plane began its descent, something had shifted. Not in grand, cinematic ways, but quietly, like sunlight after storm clouds. Two strangers with nothing in common had shared a moment neither of them knew they needed. There were no promises, no exchanged numbers, no declarations. Just a fragile, unspoken understanding that for a few hours in the sky, they weren't alone.